like your wedding, it feels like my son's bar mitzvah.
I told Suzy, I said, if we build it, they will come. And you came, thank you!
Guys.
How many of you have been to a storytelling show before? You can clap, like give it up. Okay. That is what I love about Chicagoland. We have the best storytelling community in the country. Yes. How many of you have told stories here before?
Here?
No, not here, I'm sorry, just told stories. Thank you. Sorry.
We forgot to do something very important.
Oh.
I'd like you all to meet Jill Howe.
Oh, thank you. Hi, I'm Jill Howe. Hi, everyone. And this is Suzy Weinberg. Kahn Weinberg.
So, Jill and I have been producing stories in Chicago, producing storytelling shows in Chicago for over 12 years, but never together.
Never together.
So this vibe, this back and forth, this fluid, it's not fluid because we've never done it before. But we have been having the time of our lives pulling the show together. And it all started when I texted her and said, want to meet for coffee? And I don't know what you thought when I
was like, she's cute, I'll go.
Yeah. So one thing led to another. And
what kind of show is this?
And it led to this event tonight. Jill and I just had this very strong feeling of what can we do together? What kind of a show can we Wonder Twins activate and create? What was the show we needed to see? And who would we want to be part of that show? Well, the audience, that's up to you. But the tellers, that's where the magic happens too.
And a little bit of housekeeping before we start. Can you please silence your cell phones? Thank you. Also, you may have seen some QR codes at your seats or tables. We are doing some more personal intros for our storytellers, but if you wish to learn more about them, there's a QR code there where you can, so you can take those with you and look everyone up later because you're gonna love them.
Yeah. All right, are we ready? Well, I do want to give a little background about the show. So, again, this was in the winter, we got together, what kind of show do we want to make? And when we came up with the name Cooler by the Lake, it all started to sort of come together. We wanted to show our love for this amazing city and why it's truly the coolest by the lake. And it's because of the people who work so hard to change things for the better in their communities, outside of their communities, taking risks. And we just thought, what an opportunity to share some of those voices and stories with an audience that might not have heard those voices and stories before. So tonight, the other thing I always love to say is Cooler by the Lake is just the greatest name because it's like free advertising every single night on the news, right?
You love that joke.
I love that joke.
I love that joke.
I love that joke. So we are thrilled to welcome 7 tellers tonight. Artists, activists, community builders, change makers right here in our own cities and neighborhood, our own city and neighborhoods. And I think we are ready with our first
storyteller.
Are
you guys ready for our first storyteller?
I'm just drinking you all in. By the way, more housekeeping. Bar's over there.
Bar. Christian's at the bar. Give him a round of applause.
He's already been very busy. Well done, well done.
Yes.
And bathrooms are in the lobby, and there is no intermission tonight, so please feel free to go get a drink, and then, all right. Our first storyteller is a great friend of both Jill and mine. She's been in both of our shows several times. She's not only one of our favorite storytellers, she is an advocate, an activist, and she grew up right here in Evanston. She now lives in Andersonville with her girlfriend, her 3 cats. Are they here? Are the cats here? And a 12-foot skeleton who resides on their front lawn named Catherine Zeta Bones, who is not here this evening, but Rebecca Kling is. So Rebecca, please join us, and let's kick off Cooler by the Lake.
How are we doing, Evanston? You know, that had some real Winnetka energy. Let's try that again. How are we doing, Evanston? Welcome to 8 minutes of jokes about the suburbs. No, not really. But if you're lucky, when Chicago's weather is warm and the conditions are right, you might catch Puppet Bike in Andersonville. I hear some fans in the audience. You'll be walking along, maybe subtly checking out the people through the window at the Cheetah Gym, maybe deciding which of Andersonville's many vintage shops and thrift stores to go to. And you'll hear a faint up-tempo music that tells you you're getting close. And there, on the next corner, is Puppet Bike in all its glory. A small puppet theater built onto the back of a 3-wheeled contraption powered by pedals and whimsy. Fuzzy animals will dance in and out of the view in time to the music, and if you put some money into the helpful bucket that they have set up, they'll wave. I love Puppet Bike. It's such a great part of Andersonville, and it's a delight to everyone. I've never not stopped for it. I've lived in Andersonville on and off throughout my adulthood, from my first post-college apartment to a group hang still referred to as BAP, for Becca, Annie, and Pete, the friends who lived there, to my current condo a few blocks south of Foster. I had a stay in Ravenswood Manor. I spent a couple years in DC for work, but I've always loved Andersonville. As a trans woman, I sometimes think about relationships in terms of whether or not I knew someone before I transitioned. This friend or family member has known me for years, has known me since before I changed my name and my presentation and the hormones in my blood, while that friend or colleague has only known me since Rebecca. In that sense, Andersonville is kind of one of my older relationships. The neighborhood knew me before I knew myself. I remember the first time coming down to Andersonville to see the neo-futurists present Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind. It has since been rebranded The Infinite Wrench, which a name change, very trans. I was maybe 15 years old, and my mom, who I will give a shout out to, is here in the audience. My mom had driven Andy Hazlett and I down to Ashland and Foster to see this unusual show we'd heard about. We waited in the Neo-Futurist State Park to play cards with each other and with strangers. We rolled dice to figure out how much we were going to pay. We were given name tags by actors who could not hear us and did not need to. And we were told to order by number of 30 plays strung out like laundry on a rope. I don't remember if they got through all 30 plays that time. I've learned since then that sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. But I remember sitting in that audience of my first exposure to any real sort of performance art, planting a seed for the type of work I'd be doing on stage 10, 15 years later. In 2016, I moved to DC for work, and I missed Andersonville. I missed the neighborhood's Swedish roots, still visible at Svea's restaurant, still visible at Simon's Bar. One fan for, maybe 2 fans for Simon's Bar. The Swedish American Museum with the iconic water tower on the roof painted in blue and yellow of the Swedish flag. I missed Andersonville's queer modernity of Women and Children First bookstore, of the weekly trans femme meetup at Farragut's, of Midsummer Fest that still bears a Scandinavian name but has fully embraced drag queen story hour. If I'm honest, I did not really miss Backlot Bash, the annual lesbian music fest behind Cheetah Gym, because I am too old and too partnered to go to it. But I'm glad that it exists. I moved into my current place in 2020. I'd moved back to Chicago a few months earlier, and the idea of returning to my favorite neighborhood felt like coming home in the best possible way. But Andersonville had changed a little bit since I'd been there. Mostly not bad changes, although it still bums me out that Ann Sathers is no longer in Andersonville, because those cinnamon rolls around the corner are just amazing. But as I celebrated my first COVID vaccination in early 2021, and things started to open back up, I felt a little safer, I noticed more visible queerness in Andersonville, a neighborhood that was already pretty visibly queer. But there were more rainbow pride flags and trans pride flags and all sorts of pride flags hanging in business windows and painted on murals and draped over balconies. I see more visibly trans people telling stories at Eli's Tea for their open mic, or serving ice cream at Jenny's, or browsing albums at Reckless Records. In many ways, I feel safe and secure in Andersonville, and that helps me do the work that I do. I keep my head above water while working on transgender rights issues across the country. Earlier this year, when Kansas announced that overnight it was invalidating the driver's license of any trans Kansan who had changed the gender marker on their license, I was on the phone and on Zoom calls trying to draft statements and responses from organizations around the country, and afterwards I could walk to the lake and look out. I was recently working on an op-ed with a man from Nebraska, a trans man who's fearing for both his rights and his physical safety. And after I got off the phone, I went to the Middle Eastern bakery to get some baklava. I sat on the corner, people watching in the sunshine. Of course, nowhere is perfect, but if Andersonville isn't perfect, I suppose I'm not either. I used to say that I would be done transitioning, whatever that means, when I didn't think about being trans so much, which, spoiler alert, that is not the direction my life has gone. But in some ways, transitioning is the default of life. We're all transitioning and changing all the time as individuals and communities. Hopefully these changes are mostly for the better, like when I legally changed my name, or when the Understudy opened in Andersonville, a coffee shop and bookstore for theater lovers across the street from the Jewel. One fan, I like it, thank you. Sometimes these changes are confusing and frustrating, like when I hit 40 and started having hip pain, because I was so bold as to have legs that connect to my pelvis. Or like Andersonville's rising housing prices that are often pushing people out who make the neighborhood what it is. Ideally, transitioning for trans people is becoming more of who we already were, bringing parts to the surface that were hidden or obscured. And I wonder if it's possible for a place to transition like that, to become more of what it always was. Something between gentrifying on one end and stagnation on the other. Because a neighborhood transition, what is a corner flower planter but Andersonville putting on some makeup? What is a street resurfacing but the civic equivalent to laser hair removal? And really, wouldn't Andersonville finally getting a Trader Joe's represent the same embodied authenticity of me getting a vagina? For the record, I've had one for a while now, but Andersonville is still without a Trader Joe's. So who knows what Andersonville will look like decades down the road? Who knows what I'll look like decades down the road? Hopefully, Andersonville and I will both keep chugging along, the same as we've always been, while also somehow unimaginably different from who we are today. Thank you.
All right. Give it up one more time for Rebecca Kling. What an absolute delight. I have been hearing stories from Rebecca for 13 years, and I can't get enough. I kind of forgot I was hosting back there. I was just like, oh, this is such a great story. Oh, I got to go back out here. So our next storyteller is actually also somebody who I've known for a long time, was in one of my first shows. I remember she did a story about how a bedstand is not a one-night stand. She's a dazzling playwright, poet. She just has a new book out. I'll tell you about that later. But for right now, just get ready for Barry Cole.
Okay. This is called Reading the Lake. They call them Great Lakes because they're great. If they were just okay, they'd be called okay lakes. Some people think oceans are better. They are so sure about it. I don't know, ocean this, ocean that. The thing is, my mom recently gave me a vat of sea salt from Costco. So if I want some salt water, I can just whip some up myself. 2 ingredients, instant ocean, boom. I live on the lake and I like it. I always wanted to do it, and now I'm doing it. And living on it means I look at the lake a lot. I study it. Consider color. Lake Michigan is an intentionally disorganized outdoor paint chip display with a palette ever honing in on blues and greens. The blues and greens run the gamut. They sprint the gamut. They gold medal the gamut. Honeydew green, peacock blue, broccoli jade, bib lettuce, spangle romaine, spruce with a hint of clover, dark navy, royal blueberry, aquamarine, lake foam teal, and denim. It's an unabridged collection, not just the greatest hits. Definitely a double LP as a record, or a fat, expensive coffee table book as a book. And the waves, temporary water sculptures. Waves are things with white eyebrows and mustaches, but only part-time. Waves refinish the sand in high-gloss glittery. Waves are the origami of water. Some waves are exhausted from their jobs as waves, and so they sprawl out, then collapse. Others circle back as if the party they found on the beach was not what they were expecting, and so no thanks, they're leaving. The lake is generous. I'd call her a bequeather. She reminds me of my late Grandma Roz, her ample bosom spilling out and out while a blue house dress flaps around her. Sometimes I think I'd like to gather with a group of people with white, blue, green, or silver hair, and we can all wear lake costumes and face the lake holding hands, like in Red Rover. Only this will be blue, green, silver, Rover. And when a wave comes in, we'll all run too like we're a wave. And when a wave goes out, we'll go out with it. This would look so cool, especially if you could see it from a rooftop. Now, I've had dreams about the lake, and it is true that there are a lot of boring dreams, and no one wants to hear about them. There are a lot of boring jobs, too. There are not, however, many dreams about dream jobs, and these are never boring. In my dream job, my job was mostly sorting, and I had to sort buttons and eggs and various hard candies and utensils like forks and chopsticks. And then there was another dream where my job was to count things, but I kept losing my place and had to start over right around 600 or 1,010. And then there was another dream job where I was on the phone, but not speaking on it, just on it, waiting, like a phone meditation. And my favorite dream job was assembling mushrooms, because the mushrooms had various textures and sizes and colors, and none of them were poisonous. And my whole job was simply attaching the stems to the caps. And it didn't matter if the right stem went with the right cap or not. And so I found myself just trying out all kinds of intriguing mushroom combinations. And my boss at that job was myself. Because I asked the woman who seemed to be in charge if I was doing my job correctly, and she said, "How am I supposed to know? You're the boss." But when I woke up from that dream, I realized that boss backward would be pronounced sob, and I cried over that discovery because it seemed sad and important somehow. And so at that moment, my job in real life was to be a crying person who had mushroom assembly dreams. And I hoped that in my next dream, I had a job that was just as wonderful. And I hoped it had something to do with waves and flowers, maybe assigning flower types to waves. And I hoped in this job that I could be in some kind of extremely tall lifeguard chair on the lake. And as the waves came in, I'd have a megaphone and shout, "Here comes rhododendron! Here comes begonia! Here comes rose! Here comes daffodil!" And I think if I don't dream that dream, I will just give myself that job in real life, in daylight. And I will be so satisfied that if I were to take a job satisfaction survey, my job satisfaction would be off the charts. Okay, back to reality. Facts. Did you know that Lake Huron and Lake Michigan are essentially one lake? They're connected, yep. Lake twins conceived in the uterus of the world. What's more is that there is a Stonehenge situation at the bottom of Lake Michigan. Yep, for real, not made up, look it up. We are talking a 40,000-year-old stone configuration, a mile long, winding around, and one even has a mastodon carving. Now, scientists believe the stones were used for ritual purposes or to trap big animals, but makes me wonder if people of the future will find the volleyball posts we use today and hypothesis that they were likely gigantic community pencils for collaborative poem writing. So, summer season is coming soon on Hollywood Beach, where I live just a bit south of here, and I'm ready. The garbage can couples have already been placed on the sand and are filling up on cans and wrappers. And soon, every single night at 7 p.m., a woman will get on the megaphone and say, "Attention Osterman Beach patrons, the beach is now closed. Please exit the water. The beach will reopen at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you." It makes me want to shout back, maybe with my own megaphone from before, and say, "Attention Hollywood Beach patrons." She's the only one that calls it Osterman. "The beach never closes. It's open. It's a beach. Look at how open it is. Soon it will be night. Get ready to sit on the lifeguard chairs, otherwise known as thrones. Get out your DJ equipment, put on or take off some outfits. We'll all shine our phones on you while you practice your jag routine for tonight's moonlight show." And as long as I happen to have a megaphone, I could announce a few other things. Things about how when geese fly in a line and scream, they are like a sentence with exclamation points. I could say, "Attention beachgoers, please notice the jogger with the sweat stain on the back of his shirt in the shape of a butterfly. Beachgoers, isn't it so cool that we live in Chicago, but we have prickly pear cacti now in the dune area by Ardmore? How do you feel about the silky milkweed strands and the piles of lakeweed? I'm a true fan. God, isn't that fat baby near the path adorable? My review of this morning's sunrise, an orange tour de force, stunning performance, 10 out of 10. But maybe I wouldn't say anything. Maybe I'd only mouth words like some kind of megaphone lip syncer. Also, there is a piece of driftwood down by the lake right now, and it is almost as large as a park bench. Less driftwood, more drift tree, really. I wish I could speak because I have a lot of questions, such as, how was it to have your roots torn from you? How were you able to let go and let go and let go and let go, or did you? Do you relate to the giving tree? If so, are you bitter? Is your real name Smooth Supermodel Startle Soft Velvet Skin because it seems like it could be? Did you like being buffed with the buffing cloths of the Great Lakes? How did you feel being rolled and kneaded by invisible massage therapists who somersaulted and worked you over and over, properly exfoliating you, then rocked you in their spectrum of dimples and cradles? I want you to know this. When I look out my window, I see grass, then sand, then water. That's the sequence. And sometimes I wish I could just braid everything together. I'd divide each section into 3 equal parts and cross the water over the sand, and then the grass over the water, and the sand over the grass, each having turn after turn in the middle until I reached the end. Thank you.
And that was Barry Cole. I could listen to that voice all day, preferably while on the beach. Thank you, Barry. That was, woo, okay. I do want to mention that Barry has a new book of poetry. It just came out a few days ago on the 15th, and it is called Lacquer is a Thrilling Word. So please look out for it. I wish we had them here with us tonight, but Lacquer is a Thrilling Word by Barry Cole. So congratulations, Barry. Our next performer is an all-around creative and artist. She's an award-winning bilingual storyteller, actor, director, filmmaker, an arts educator, and an activist. In her spare time, she's the founder of Workers Teatro, which gives voice to working people who have experienced discrimination and exploitation in the workplace. We are thrilled to welcome to the stage Jasmine Cardenas.
In the summer of 2016, I was workshopping a new play at Looking Glass Theater Company. I was David Schwimmer's assistant director, and this was a new play. It was about working people caught at the margins of unsecure temporary work, day laborers. And we had brought in temp workers who work through temp agencies and get sent out to factories to tell their stories to the cast and the directors. 3 workers sat before us, a Spanish-speaking Latina and 2 men. All 3 told us their experiences of working in factories right here in Chicago, well, next door in Chicago. The Latina told us about how she was sent to a factory and she was sent to clean while the workers were bottling vodka bottles. How the machines move so fast that even though they are very careful, sometimes there are accidents. And she described one such accident where the speed was just too much and a worker's arm got stuck in the machine. Blood everywhere, and they rushed the man out the door and forced her to clean it up. Sweeping up human tissue, bones, and skin, she didn't understand what was happening and why she was being forced to cover up this accident. A couple days later, that same worker was back at the factory, missing a forearm. The story, he said, he'd been dropped off at a local hospital and told not to say where he got hurt if he wanted his job back. I tried to visualize this man, dripping with blood, abandoned at a hospital, and returning to the place that had hurt him to keep working because he needed money that badly. The cleaning lady and all the other workers were warned, threatened about speaking up. She still has nightmares about this event. I felt like I had to do something. I was so naive. I mean, how the fuck is this happening in Chicago, in the USA? I mean, now listen, I was born to immigrant parents. I already was very well versed in the haves and have-nots of society and the racism that our country has just embedded into its flavor of apple pie. And I'd gotten used to it a long time ago. But I also believed We had won big wins so that at least in certain spaces, we were protected by the law. For example, labor and work. I knew about the Civil War and fighting to end slave labor. Along the line, I had also learned about how it simply morphed into chain gangs and jail labor, fueling the biggest industrial prison complex of the world. But somehow, I still believed that Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez and all the agricultural workers who had struck and forced our country to not eat grapes so that we could win some basic rights, that those still held truth today. Bathrooms, clean water to drink. In Chicago 140 years ago, we won so many things when these immigrants were caught in this huge thing called the Haymarket Massacre, so that you and I could have an 8-hour workday. I knew that these were big wins. Right outside of Chicago in Ottawa, Illinois, the Radium Girls, they were poisoned. And even as they were dying and their jaws were falling off, they sued so that their employers would be held liable for occupational diseases, winning workers' safety rights. And you and I, we still benefit from those today. Case after case, it felt like such significant wins to protect us today. My parents worked in factories. They came from Colombia, and my dad worked in a factory. He told me about the hot conditions, the long hours, but not about inhumane conditions. My mom worked at that miniature lamp factory that used to be on Irving and Montrose on Ravenswood. And she had a good job. Both of them worked really hard. They told us study hard so we could get other opportunities, better ones than they had. Be honest, tell the truth, give to others. We collected money in those little white church milk cartons to give to the needy. We were gonna study hard, get good grades, and go to college. I remember my dad telling me about La Migra raiding the factories when officials entered and all the workers scattered, running as fast as they could, hiding. But nothing about the factories stealing their wages or manhandling women or machines moving so fast that workers got caught in them. Just hard work and wages earned. Those brought us the house that I grew up in Roscoe Village, and it paid for my basketball uniforms and my ballet classes. Hard work was the name of the game, and I ate it up. Be a good person, be a helper, Jasmine. That conviction that I should be a helper in the world, it came from watching my parents. Every Christmas, there would be a new immigrant at our table that nobody knew, but they had come here alone from Colombia, and they didn't know anyone else. And so rather than them being stuck by themselves on the holiday, my parents would invite them over. That was just the way we did it. Siempre hay espacio en la mesa para todos. There's always room at the table for everyone, my mom said. My mom's sitting right over there. That led me to say, I'm going to use my art for a greater good. And I studied a theater technique that wasn't about performance, actually, but it exists, in fact, to make it so that if there's a problem, together we can find the solution. That's the whole reason for the technique. It's about social change, a tangible change, to find solutions to problems in our own lives or in our communities. I knew this technique could help these workers that I was listening to. My teacher, Boal, had told me, we ask questions. We ask questions that we do not know the answers to, and we seek the answers together. I didn't know if they'd be interested, but I asked the day laborers if they would do a workshop together with me, a theater workshop, and I remember that day like it was yesterday. I remember half the room was African-American, Black, English-speaking workers, and half the room was Spanish-speaking immigrant workers. I shared with them a technique called image theater, where we created images with our bodies to express things. And I talked to them about how we were going to create an image where some people have power and some people don't have power. Could they think of an experience like this at the work site? One participant created this image. hunched over, holding their hurt wrist. And this other worker was placed, yelling at him. And I looked around. All of the workers were very, very moved and resonated with this image of the hunched worker holding their wrist. I asked them, could you intervene? Or how would you respond to this image if you were there? One by one, they came by. One person put themselves right in between the hurt worker and the yelling worker, creating a separation, a safety. Another came alongside the hurt worker to see if they could help. Another stood off to the side and watched the yelling worker, witnessing what that person of authority was doing. That image, it's been seen by hundreds, I dare say thousands of people in different sessions about workplace safety, at the governor's office, in university public health spaces, but most often in the parks and in church basements in Chicago, where we're trying to get workers to stand up for each other. That was 9 years ago, and our workers group is called Workers Teatro. Teatro means theater. We are not a collective that is like organized. We're not like an actual organization. We're just a volunteer collective, and we meet in the parks and we meet in people's basements. Right now we're meeting in someone's yard or Marquette Park, kind of wherever it's not raining. And we practice we play these theater games to connect, to slow down, to be present. Reaching fingertips up to the sky, and rooting our feet deep into the earth, we take deep breaths. And when you reconnect with your breath, you remind yourself that you're not a machine. And when you make eye contact with someone, you're reminded that you're not alone. We're in this thing together. I've seen really powerful transformations in individuals when they feel seen. Teatro is a powerful tool. It makes people who feel invisible on purpose every day at work feel visible. And that shifts something. It's something cardinal, something so core to who we are. A few years ago, we were presenting in a room of like career professionals at this national workforce development event, and our team walked in and saw all the suits, and they freaked out. No se preocupen, don't be nervous. They invited us to tell our stories. Quieren escuchar lo que tenemos para decir. They want to hear what we have to say. Bravely, my team got up there, and we performed. And when it was done, after all of the interactive moments with different people stepping in to see if they could change the outcome of that play, I remember there was a supervisor yelling at an older woman. This would have been an ageist scene. And he was yelling at her, no me das suficiente rendimiento. Vete vieja. You're too slow. Get out of here. And the other workers were like, no, ella está trabajando. She's working. She's fine. We're working good. Ah, tú también? You want to get out of here too? We asked the audience, is there a moment in this scene that you could see an intervention, a way to change something? We replayed the scene. And somebody said, freeze! And they jumped up. And in that moment, they decided to say, don't tell me to go. I want to talk to the human resources director. We call that magic. That was so much magic. It was so obvious to the audience that we didn't have to go back and check in about that. We take for granted the privileges that we have in professional career positions, choices that don't exist for the working poor. Another person came up and got into the supervisor's face. What are you gonna do? You wanna hit her? You wanna throw her out? He got thrown out too, right? What could we do? What are the things that you and I could do to help workers? Maybe boycott those products. Maybe get a helping hand, bring in lots of pressure. Ultimately, I think that the owners of those factories, and maybe I'm naive, but they're grandparents too. They have grandkids that went to college. One of the guys at that factory that we were talking about studied at Arizona State University, But because he was South Sider, he showed up to Chicago and didn't have any connections in the big office buildings downtown. So he was at this factory. Gatekeeping is real. We walked out of there. The audience at the end, the audience asked the team, "You guys, how did you feel about doing theater this way?" And she said, "Me siento muy bien porque me siento que el estrés se va. I feel very good because I feel stress leaving me. Siento que me escucharon. I feel like I was listened to. I can't fix everything and these factories are too many, but I know that even though theater has its limitations, with the people, with the workers themselves, so much is possible." Thank you.
Jasmine. How are you guys doing? You having a good time? Yeah, excellent. Well, we have a really amazing act next, and in fact, many of you have seen him already if you got here early. I'm losing my mic here. James Neary is a singer-songwriter, award-winning singer-songwriter. I first learned of him when he won a contest at the Acorn Theater up in Three Oaks. And yeah, we love the Acorn Theater. And he just blew me away with his heart and his soul that he just bears on stage. And so we'd like to bring him back for a featured song this evening. So please welcome to the stage again, James Neary.
I'm back. I've got exactly one song for you. And this time I don't need this because I'm going to be a little uppity about it. So, throughout my journey, I have been medicated and treated for all sorts of disorders and, bipolar 1 and 2 and depression and ADHD, and I'm finally on a cocktail of medications where, I'm good now. It took a long time. And one of the steps in that journey was Spravato, if anyone knows what that is. It's a modified ketamine molecule that you take via, nasal sniffer. And to make a long story short, you kind of trip for 30 minutes. And I had a mind-opening experience the very first time that it took effect, where I was watching myself, watch my reality through a TV screen. And it was this disambiguation of awareness that triggered something in this path of trying to figure my shit out, where you could just escalate. Okay, what if the situation requires a greater degree of awareness? What if we zoom out a little bit? And in the midst of this stage of discovery, I wrote this song. This song is called "I Am," and it is kind of a self-empowerment anthem. This was prior to the brain surgery, prior to all of that. It was just a message that I gave myself to remind myself that I'm worth the work. So, here we go. Shivering, reconstituted. Fantasy depleted. The river winds reconstituted. see deleted. Ether giving way to shining eyes. Tether fades away. I transcend vacant skies. I am enough to deserve this love. I am here, God damn it. I am beyond the veil. My spirit sails here now, forevermore. I am. Obliteration, chrysalis open. Fantasy with meaning. A ripple scent, defiant and open. A fallacy repeated. Ether giving way to darkened heaves. Boundaries fade away. Not even I can stop me. I am worth the work. I am worth the work. I am worth the work. Gonna smile through the sweat until I'm worth the work. I am worth the work. I know I am worth the work, the work, the work, the work. I am enough to deserve this love. I am here, God damn it. I am beyond the veil. My spirit sails here and now, forevermore. I am enough to deserve this love. I am here, God damn it. I am beyond the veil. My spirit sails here and now, forevermore. I am. Thank you very much for your time and attention, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And also, thank you.
You know, James had a post today that I read, and he said that he has always wanted to play this venue. So give it up. Give some love to James. All right. Our next storyteller. Hi, everyone on the sides. Hi, everyone on the sides. I feel like we're not paying attention enough to you. So this next storyteller I met on my TV screen. I was watching WTTW's Peacekeepers documentary series. Anyone know it? Awesome. Okay, a couple people, yes. So Damian Morris works for Breakthrough Ministries, which does some work in West Garfield Park. You're going to learn more about it. I'm thrilled when I actually met him in person to find that he was even more wonderful than I could have imagined. So please put your hands together for Damian Morris telling his first story.
I, Damian Morris. I am the 45-year-old Chief Program Officer of Violence Prevention for Breakthrough Ministries. Breakthrough Ministries is a nonprofit organization located on the west side of Chicago and serves the Garfield Park community. I also stand before you as the first formerly incarcerated staff member to join the organization, which means that the organization hires those who have lived experience to engage with those who are most vulnerable to becoming either a perpetrator or a victim of gun violence. But let me take you back to 17-year-old me and how my lived experience and what I went through made me who I am today. Growing up in a predominantly female household, education and respect for women were instilled in me. But let me tell you this, curiosity played a part in my lived experience and what I went through. See, even though I had a good household, education was instilled in me, I was curious about the street. And so on New Year's Eve, 1998, I was wakened by my sister, my youngest sister at the time, who informed me that my mother wanted to speak with me. As I gathered myself together and I made my way downstairs, I could hear my mother clearly and with conviction in her voice saying, "Oh no, not my son. You may have the wrong boy. My son would never be involved in something like that." When I entered the living room, there stood my mother, my grandmother, and 2 detectives. As I tried to reassure my mother everything would be okay, as soon as they get through questioning me, I'll return back home. Well, guess what? After hours of interrogation, the detective told me to sit tight, and then he came back an hour later. "Mr. Morris, you have a right to remain silent. You are being charged as an accessory to murder and armed robbery." On January the 1st, 1998, as I stood in the courtroom, and as I hear the state's attorney rattle off the charges, she then followed up with a life sentence offer. I heard my mother gasp behind me, but it took everything in me to not turn around, to stay focused on the judge, because I could not face the reaction of my family, let alone my mother. The judge then proceeded to look at my public defender and say, "Is there anything that you want to add?" He cleared his throat. "Well, Your Honor, my client has been a student up until his arrest, and clearly you can see the support of his family behind him." The judge then looked away from my public defender, looked back at his calendar, and scheduled me for a 2 to 3 month sentence, continuance. As I was informed to shackle up and return back to my cell, and while I was waiting that 2 to 3 months continuance, a fight broke out between 2 rival gangs. The street organization that I was a part of, we was outnumbered. And as a result, I was stabbed multiple times in the arm. As I was rushed to the trauma center, I still was a minor at the age of 17, so that means that the nurse had to have my mother's permission to stitch me up. I reached out to the nurse and made eye contact with her, and I informed her, "Please tell my mother I sustained these injuries from a game of pickup ball." She responded with the same eye contact and said, "I too have a teenage son, and I understand." Going back to my cell now that I have 72 stitches in my arm, I thought about it. On one hand, the state's attorney is offering me a life sentence. But on the other hand, someone is trying to take my life. As I returned to my cell, I asked my cellmate at the time to give me a minute. He gave me a minute. He stood in front of the doorway, and I fell down to my knees and I prayed to God. I thank God for giving me a second chance at life in the Cook County. But I begged and pleaded with him to give me a second chance at life in society. After 7 days of being on lockdown, activities returned to normal. We was preparing for the GED. And let me say this, I'll receive my GED within that year. I never knew that the accomplishment meant more to my teacher than myself. As she presented me with the certificate in front of everybody, it also inspired my would-be rivals, right, and my rivals, to get their GED as well. So by me taking the initiative and tutoring them every day for 2 hours, I never realized that I was doing violence reduction work in there. That same year, they declared me to be the voice of the gallery, meaning that if there was any conditions that we was faced with, I would file grievances to contest those conditions, so I was the go-to person. That same year, we reduced 50 fights, which means that someone either were almost stabbed to death or beaten to death, and reduced those fights, those incidents to 15. That same year, that life sentence that I was offered was reduced to 20 years at 50%. That was a God moment. Wow. Now, I tell you this, that's all within 1 year of my 10-year, 3-month sentence that I've done. April 1st, 2008. Yes, April Fool's Day, right? I was on that Greyhound bus coming back to the city of Chicago. As I sat next to a gentleman who was in and out of the penal institution, after he discovered that I spent 10 years and 3 months of my life, he told me, man, you know, with that amount of time, the only thing that you're destined for is to work at a fast food restaurant. I then looked at him and I replied, just because you put limitations on you and your potential, I'm not gonna let you place those on me. And so now I must say that now I'm an Emmy Award winner for the WTTW Peacekeepers. I'm a father of 2 girls. The 6-year-old is my boss. And through it all, the most rewarding confirmation that I received is from a gentleman that I was locked up with who understood and found out that I was the chief program of violence prevention. He told me, hey, I'm not surprised at where you are because it's always been in you. And so I would like to leave you all with 2 Chronicles 15 chapter 7 verse, which says, but as for you, be strong, do not give up, for your work will be rewarded. Thank you.
Oh, keep it going for Damian Morris! Wow. Suzy, are you joining me up here? Well, you know, Damian just came off the screen and came into our lives, and we're so happy for it. So stay tuned for more from him, we hope.
Oh my God. Working with Damian, we worked with almost all our storytellers, workshopping all together as a group, which was phenomenal, bringing them together, many of them meeting for the first time. We particularly spent a lot of time with Damian because, as you can imagine, his story, to condense it to 8 minutes, are you kidding me? And he did it with such grace, and well, I don't have to tell you. I mean, that was amazing. So this is it's been a rewarding experience, but really in this moment, we want to keep this going. We hope this is truly the first of many shows to come, and productions and workshops, you know, these stories matter, and having an audience to share them with means the world to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just have to also thank Suzy for being such a wonderful co-producer and making this such a fun experience. So we were thrilled to be able to share this with you today, and there's still more to come.
We do. let me stay up here with me. 'Cause
Oh, I'm staying up. Okay.
Stay next.
Okay.
Stay-
Hey.
Move in with
Hey,
me.
girl.
Sorry. Jeff, meet our new roommate. Our next storyteller is a very dear friend, a former colleague of mine. We worked together for many years. So I speak from the heart saying he's one of the most creative people I know. He's a very talented designer, creative director. He's been a community leader, an artist, and you know what? He is just one of the nicest people I've ever met. So we are absolutely thrilled to welcome Julian Jackson to share his story tonight.
Well, despite that introduction, I'm not a natural villain. But somehow, I've become one. Don't get me wrong, I'm a villain for all the right reasons, but it still feels pretty bad. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Every villain has an origin story, so it might help you to understand mine. There's nothing particularly extraordinary about me, at least nothing that would have led any of you to believe that I would one day be hiding behind a mask. I grew right up here, right in Evanston, but I've lived most of my life in Rogers Park. Rogers Park is arguably Chicago's most diverse neighborhood. It's a landing spot for refugees and immigrants from all around the world. My wife is a Mennonite pastor, and together we've always had a passion for welcoming our newest neighbors. With some other folks, we founded a congregation in Rogers Park, and that's become a home for many of those folks. So when the second Trump administration came in, on a wave of anti-immigrant sentiment, I went to a community meeting led by Protect Rogers Park. And by the end of the meeting, I found myself volunteering for the leadership team. Even if you haven't heard of Protect Rogers Park, you probably know some of our work. With our partners in Little Village and Pilsen, we've developed and popularized the use of those orange whistles and the salute reporting techniques that have gone nationwide as a nonviolent way to resist the invasions of our neighborhoods. We've trained thousands of people online, but there's still a place for live, intensive, in-person trainings. People need to see what it's like to really confront these ICE officers, to understand their potential violence, and to practice reacting effectively and safely. So, somebody has to pretend to be these thugs. Now, despite my mild-mannered, middle-aged, Midwest Mennonite dad vibes, I volunteered to gather together a ragtag outfit of rogues and misfits to portray these ICE officers. And in dubious honor of the former leader of Border Patrol, Greg Bovino, we call ourselves the Fovinos. A barely 5-foot rugby player, a middle-aged banker, an ex-Army new mom, a boxer, badass lesbians and gentle giants, each one with a level head, a love of their neighbors, and a weird ability to simulate something dark and intimidating without succumbing to it. Together, we studied how ICE agents operate, how they target people for abduction, and how they often escalate with observers. We donned dark glasses, combat boots, and of course, the masks. And we become, at least for these trainings, the thing that we oppose. So one of the exercises that we run is called the Hassle Line. It trains folks to stay calm and focused on filming the simulated abduction and getting key information, while we, the Fovinos, subject them to verbal abuse and intimidation. This is critical to helping folks understand the intensity of these encounters before they get out there in the field and know how to regulate their own responses to it. It's just not a normal thing to subject yourself to. And as a Fovino, a lot of us are going against our instincts when we yell and act aggressive towards people. I recently recruited my very large bodybuilding adult son to join the Fovinos. But after the first couple times, he confided in me, "Dad, I can stand there and look intimidating, but I just can't yell at people." These exercises are asking the Fovinos to be and do everything I have taught him not to be. Foul-mouthed, out of control, a bully, using our voice and our bodies to intimidate rather than to protect. We've spent our lives trying to be kind, gentle human beings, so this is unnatural, even if it is an act. I can lean a little bit on my collegiate acting experience, but I still have to take a long shower afterwards to wash the stink away. I think my son's reluctance and that shitty feeling are the right response. If anybody enjoys this work too much, they probably shouldn't be doing it. Something about what Nietzsche said about staring into the abyss. That discomfort gets at the central questions I've been asking myself. What do we say to our children during this time? What do they see us doing? Do we stand up for our neighbors? In order to provide good training, we have to get out of our comfort zone. I needed to see how these folks operate for myself. I started going down to Broadview, the detention facility on the southwest side of Chicago. I was struck by the ICE agents' casual provocation of protesters. Agents would shoot into the crowd from the rooftop for no discernible reason, but for fun. Another time, they would sneak up on singing protesters around the fence and just start shooting them through the fence. I was pretty careful, but I ended up getting shot up by pepper balls and tear gas, and I came away wondering if anyone would believe the cartoon villainy of it all. But there were also times for us to take lessons in not taking ourselves too seriously. In a different simulation, we Fovinos were pretending to abduct somebody and keep the protesters away. One woman was completely frustrated by my blocking her from getting close enough to film, and she lost it. She looked up at me, something changed in her eyes, and she hauled off and just started slugging me. And when that didn't work, she grabbed my shirt and ripped it off my body, leaving me half naked in the middle of this simulation. The main trainer whistled it dead. Everybody fell silent, their mouths open. And the trainer said, "Okay, see, that's not what we want to do." But I understand that lady. It's pretty difficult to know how you're going to react when you're really face to face with true villains. The morning Midway Blitz hit Rogers Park and the helicopters came in low. I thought I was ready. My patrol bicycle was stowed in the front hall when I got the call. I heard the whistles before I saw it. 4 SUVs blocking an intersection and masked men jumping out to tackle an elderly man who'd just been walking down the street. Several other responders arrived at about the same moment I did, and the ICE agents turned towards us with their hands on their weapons. By that point, we had taught thousands of people on how to do proper recording, but my hand shook as I pressed the record button, and I double-tapped it, taking only a 1-second video of the ground. They threw that old man in the back of their truck and nearly ran me down as they raced off, several of us pursuing on our bicycles, blowing our whistles. I couldn't help thinking, all that training for that? But then, the neighborhood's training started to kick in. My neighbors started appearing on every street corner with those orange whistles around their neck. Those of us responding to the calls got faster, more precise, and calmer. Back at our church, Sunday school had been canceled. Blacked out SUVs were circling locations frequented by refugees, and many of our friends and their children were huddled inside, unsure what they would do and whether they would be targeted if they stepped outside. And then, dozens of our neighbors, some who might have never darkened the door of a church, joined us in creating protective circles around our congregation, around the Hispanic congregation down the street. See, those people were asking the same internal conversations and questions that I was. They have to be able to look at their children in the eye and say that they stood up for their neighbors. Several of those folks credited the Fovino trainers with preparing them to not back down when the moment came. They responded bravely, and perhaps most importantly, we were responding together. That weekend, I think we began to look each other in the eyes in a different way. Whenever we saw those orange whistles around someone's neck, there were nods, thumbs up. One time a man jumped out of his old junk truck and gave me a big hug. Border Patrol hammered Rogers Park for a couple of weeks, but the energy and the solidarity held, and they had to go elsewhere, the Southwest side, North Carolina, Minnesota. The Fovinos and I began to travel too, assisting local groups with their trainings and joining them in their patrols. If I thought I had witnessed villainy in Chicago, it paled compared to the sustained chaos of Minneapolis. But I also witnessed a change in the eyes of the agents, who know that they're losing the moral battle, and seeing a wave of people growing up in front of them. Not everybody is called to the front lines, but I believe that everybody has a role in the resistance. Yeah, my role seems to be playing a villain. It's one of the ways I try to keep my humanity. It still feels scary. The work can be hard and ugly. And more than that, there's still people out there getting taken and hurt. But somehow, out of that shit, out of that compost, there's something beautiful growing. It's a wave of fake villains and real everyday heroes like you.
Good evening. I'm Marty. I'm your poetry palette cleanser as we move into the last portion of this incredible night. But before I read this, what I would love to do is, first of all, just thank you all so much for bringing your bodies into this space tonight. This kind of yes, please applaud for yourselves. This kind of human gathering is what's gonna get us through, right? Yeah. Can we all just take a breath together? Can we get a little woo for just like a second? I mean, they sent a poet on stage, right? So let's just get woo. Like, let's just take a breath together, right? Inhaling. The breath always reminds me how inseparable we actually are. How not separate. This is Murmuration, Chicago. We have a little phone song dance. In this split, guilt city, the starlings still sing in flocks and droves, dominating the wires and trees with their tinny whistling. A plastic whistle dangles from the keychain hanging by my door. Small preparation for ice. La Migra, the agents of ruin. I see your mask and raise you a food pantry. I see your warrant and raise you a rent party. The starlings go of a sudden quiet, swoop as one toward the park, darkening the sky before resuming their concert, their racket, their cacophonous calling and calling. The telephone tells me these are European starlings, Sturnus vulgaris, a non-native population that took hold after being introduced to Central Park in the 1800s. I see your border and raise you a skyline. I see your border and raise you this stone older than the oldest stone the oldest person you know has ever held. And still, we're alive with firsts, the first poet laureate in this city's heavily dented history, the first out gay man to be People magazine's sexiest man alive. This lesbian approves. The first black woman mayor of Detroit, first Muslim mayor of New York City, the first deep ocean carnivorous death ball sponge ever seen by human eyes, the first American coup of our lifetime. Stranger, we're all just visitors here, whistling our way past graveyards and food lines, over bridges that mayor pulled up to trap protesters, waiting in school parking lots to keep nannies and grandmothers from being kidnapped before the wide eyes of kindergartners, singing our victories and singing our fear songs, finger painting figures on the walls of our caves, markings to say we were here. We had these eyes, these hands. We heard the birds. We did not know what they were saying, and we loved them anyway.
Marty McConnell, that was exquisite. Thank you so much. And a shout out to Julian Jackson before her. Wow, Fovino. We have come to the final teller of the evening. I'm so sad. But I'm actually thrilled. This has been a really wonderful night. Can we just give it up for all the tellers? While we're at it, a huge shout out to Space. You guys have been outstanding. We've had the best time working with you guys and making this happen. So here we are, our last performer. So similar to Jill discovering Damian Morris while watching PBS, I discovered our next teller listening to NPR. You know, they call them driveway moments. You're listening to Be Easy and you can't get out of the car. Well, I couldn't get out of my garage. And this was a little unusual because it was a program on Be Easy in front of a live audience. They're singing. I'm in my car. I'm singing by myself. I'm smiling ear to ear. I'm thinking, this is so weird. Why am I singing? And I get the guy's name. I get the name of his organization that he founded. It's called Chicago Circle Singing. I go inside, I Google him, I stalk him, I DM him, I text him, finally, he gets back to me. And guess what? He is here this evening. So, give it up for Davin Youngs.
tumnare tumboya tumnare numakune sunaya kumare tumboya tumbe tumade tumboya noya kumasle tumote osaga numbe chumbale fumbare kumba tumbale kumba tumda dum da da dum da 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 dum. Keep going. Can you sing and listen? Da 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 da. Keep it going, all right? In 2015, I packed up my things. I kissed my partner Scott and our little pit bull Nico goodbye. And I got on a plane, left Chicago, and made my way to upstate New York. Da 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 doom, da 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 doom, da da da. I was going to a place called Omega, da da da, or the Omega Institute. Dum dum male dum male. The workshop was called Circle Songs. Da 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 doom, da 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 doom, da. See, Omega was like an old school spiritual wellness center, a remnant of the 1970s when people started to gather in the West around Eastern traditions like Qigong, meditation, mindfulness, yoga. Doom, da da. But I wasn't going to do any of those things. Da 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 doom. I was going to sing. I'll never forget the first day of the workshop. I walked into this giant gathering space. I didn't know anyone, but there were about 190 people from all over the globe. And standing at the center of this circle was the one and only Bobby McFerrin. This crowd's old enough to know. 1980s icon, don't worry, be happy, Bobby McFerrin standing in the center of the circle like some sort of musical shaman. Doom, da 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 da, doom, da da. He was using his voice like I had never heard before, improvising. At one point he sounded like a flute. Next, he would sound like a trombone. He was making up parts. This is for you over here. Sing that out for me. Keep going. And before I knew it, you sound good. Do 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 do. Everyone was singing. Do 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 do. Everyone was singing except for me. I had a lump in my throat the size of a softball. I couldn't make a sound. I was so overcome with emotion, the sound of all of these collective voices singing together. It was powerful. I'd never heard anything quite like it before. Actually, that's not true. It was very familiar. I knew this experience from childhood at church. See, I'm from a very small town in southwestern Michigan. Population 3,500 people. And my father, the Reverend David Youngs, was a minister at a local United Methodist church, a rural community. On any given Sunday, there were only 50 to 75 people in that sanctuary, but boy, did they sing. And some of my earliest memories of singing were singing in the congregation, singing in community. I loved it. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free. I had a natural talent from a young age. And so what happened to me is what happens to so many pastors' kids. I quickly got thrust up on stage. At first, I was just lending my voice to the community, but before I knew it, I was leading them all in collective song. It was an incredible experience. I was amazed at how my voice could inspire the whole room to sing more robustly. By the age of 11, I convinced my parents to get me voice lessons. They found the only woman in our town who had a master's degree in vocal performance, shout out to Stacy Rose, who agreed to work with a prepubescent boy who loved to sing. I marched into my very first lesson and declared to her, I want to be on Star Search. At that point in my life, I was convinced there was no greater calling than to meet Ed McMahon and follow in the footsteps of Britney Spears, Justin Timberlake, Christina Aguilera. She listened politely and then quickly handed me this yellow book of sheet music called 24 Italian Songs and Arias. I was pretty sure this book wasn't going to fulfill my pop fantasies. But I love to sing, and I was totally game to do whatever she advised me to do, but before you knew it, I fancied myself an opera singer. I unveiled myself as an opera singer at the middle school talent show. By the time my voice changed, I could make a pretty heroic baritone sound. And throughout high school, I traveled all over the state of Michigan, performing and competing in operatic competitions. Bella siccome un angelo in terra pellegrino, fresca siccome il giglio che s'apre sul mattino. I even wrote in my senior high school yearbook, I wrote that you were going to see me on the stage of the Metropolitan Opera. I then made my way to the Oberlin Conservatory of Music, where I pursued and received a degree in vocal performance. I fully intended to be an opera singer. That is until graduation rolled around. Something became true for me in that moment. See, singing had always been my love, but it hadn't always been my joy. There's more to this story. I wasn't just a kid from a small town with a talent. I was a queer kid in a small town who happened to have a father for a minister. I learned from a very young age that it was not safe to disclose the truth of who it was that I was. Through some weird irony, I actually found safety on stage, hiding in plain sight. If I could just perform big enough, if I could just be loud enough, if I could just impress enough, people seemed to love me. And that seemed like a much better alternative than the honesty and the authenticity that potentially would cause me to face rejection. And by the time I was ready to graduate Oberlin, I couldn't do it anymore. I had to figure out how to reconcile all of these years not really being who I was. I had to figure out how to let go of Davin the opera singer, Davin the performer, and settle into Davin the person. And so I did what a lot of us do when we graduate from college. I sort of gave up the dream. I moved to Chicago. I got a 9-to-5 job, very responsible, pushing paper. Yes, we still used paper then. And I spent most of my 20s desperately trying to find how it was that I could show up in the world and use my voice in a way that felt true to me. I did some professional work outside of my 9-to-5 job. I sang in professional choirs. I taught voice lessons. I did church work, but none of it felt really right. And then at the age of 28, I met a teacher named Jeannie Levetri. Now, Jeannie is the creator of something called somatic voice work, and she single-handedly changed the trajectory of my life. She was the first person to say to my face, "I'm not impressed with how big and loud you can sing." Specifically, she said to me, "You don't know your voice. If you knew your voice, you wouldn't push it so much." I knew she was right. She helped me understand the function of my voice in my body. She helped me understand the ways in which I had built up an armor, an artifice, a protection that took up residency in my muscles, in my tissue, in my ligament, in my cartilage. And she helped me pull it away to find something more free, something more easy, something more me. After 2.5 years of working together, I was making sounds like I had never made before. I felt good, I felt free, I felt easy, I felt weird, but there was still a big problem. I didn't know what to sing. I'd spent all those years working on opera, sacred music, a little musical theater, some jazz, but none of it really felt like how I wanted to show up artistically and creatively in the world. And I had heard in the somatic voice work community about this workshop with Bobby McFerrin. The premise of the workshop was improvisation. And I thought, well, I don't know what the hell to sing, so let's go make it up and see what we can find out. Which brings us to that fated day, Standing in that room with all of those people, I can now see so clearly why I was overcome with emotion. There were so many layers to what was unfolding within me. Grief. Grief for that little boy who thought he had to perform and didn't feel safe enough to sing. Disappointment for all the years I had been making sounds that were simply to impress others and didn't honor the truth of my body, my heart, my mind, and my spirit. Joy at being reconnected with this collective singing experience that was so familiar, so life-giving, so a part of my story. Awe. Why do humans sing together? Why does it feel so damn good? Why does it seem like it can change the world? And wonder, I realized during that day that if you would have taken a microphone and held it up to any of the individual voices in the room, you would have heard that some of them were amazing singers, and some of them weren't so good. But when we sang together, it didn't matter. We sounded incredible. We made a beautiful noise. By the second day, I found my voice. I was able to contribute, and for the rest of the week, I was singing nonstop. If I wasn't singing with the big group with Bobby, I was in some breakout group at the lake, and the yard, the cafeteria, the bathroom. I was by myself singing all the time, experimenting. What sort of weird sounds can I make? How can I improvise? How can I create? What sort of music lurks within me? And by the end of the week, I had learned that there were circle singing communities all over the world. I was told that in every major city, you could find a group of people that gathered in this way, in this form. And so I hurried back to Chicago, destined to find my new people, only to discover they weren't here. So my friends, I did what every good pastor's kid does. In adulthood, I found and created my own community. My own church, if you will, my church of singing, Chicago Circle Singing. The very first gathering was in the autumn of 2015. I pulled together some of my favorite performers and some of my favorite singers, and I very amateurly led them in games through improvisation, circle singing, and circle songs. It was magic. It was everything that I hoped for. But I learned quickly in subsequent gatherings that those performers and those singers, they weren't going to be the people that kept coming to these gatherings. It turns out that the people who kept coming to the gatherings weren't necessarily the people who thought of themselves as singers, but they were people who loved to sing. People who had been told from a young age that they didn't have a voice. People who loved to sing as a child but had somehow gotten disconnected from their voice as an instrument. People who prioritized community, play, connection, embodiment, fun. It is now 10 years later, 2026. With the exception of a pandemic-long hiatus, this community still exists. And I have to tell you, I used to struggle for years to get 15 people in the room. And now, since we picked back up in 2023, something happened. It took off. On any given second Wednesday of the month in the South Loop neighborhood of Chicago, you will find 100 to 150 strangers gathering together in community in spontaneous song for one of the most magical nights of our month. And we are a strange group of weirdos. Young, old, black, white, brown, gender non-conforming, unabashedly queer. We stand together, we sing together in love, we sing together in community, we sing together in connection, we dance, we move our bodies, we are there for each other. And at the center of the circle, you'll often find me. Me singing for that little boy who felt like he had to perform and didn't feel safe enough to sing. Me singing as this grown man who's done a hell of a lot of work to heal those wounds and show up as authentically and freely as possible. Me singing for everyone in the room, giving them a permission slip to be exactly where it is that they are on their voice journey. We sing because that's what humans do. We sing because we find connection, we find community, and maybe naively, we believe that that connection and that community can change not only our city, but but maybe, just maybe, the world. Doom, da 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 da, doom, da 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 da, doom, da 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 da, doom. We stand, da 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 da, doom, da 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 da. Keep going. Da, doom, da, doom, da, doom, da, doom, da, doom, da, doom, da. This is your part over here. Doom, da, doom, da, doom, da, doom, da, doom, da, doom, da. Keep going. Do, 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 do. Yeah, put your hands together. Do, 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 do. Keep going on. Do, 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 do. Do, da, do, 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 do. This group right here, this is your part. Dum-da-le-o, dum-da-le-o. Keep going. Dum-da-le-o, dum-da-le-o. Come on.
Keep it going for Devin Young! Wow. Look at all of you. Oh my gosh, what, he talked about, yes, keep clapping. He talked about the church of singing, and Suzy and I believe in the church of storytelling. Amen, yes. We'd like to give a few thanks, first of all, to our tellers this evening.
We can cut off. Okay. Rebecca, Jasmine, Barry, Julian, Marty, Damien, and James and Devin. Jill, thank you. We want to thank everyone here at Space. They've been outstanding. Is this not the best space in the city? And Evanston and the North Shore. This is just outstanding. And a big shout out to Dave Spector, who really helped make all this happen. So thank you, Dave. Oh, and I feel actually quite honored and privileged to make a little announcement. Tomorrow, going on sale at Space, the show is taking place July 26th. It's called Songs of Protest, Sounds of Freedom. It's a benefit for the Illinois Council of Immigration and Refugee Rights. So check that out. Go up to Space, July 26th, on sale tomorrow. And I think...
Okay, I want to give it up for the audience. I have a favorite quote, and it is, "Listening is an act of love." And all of you shared that love with us today, and we're so thrilled. Please scan the QR code on the bottom to join our mailing list. We won't spam you. We'll just let you know about events going on that we're doing, and hopefully we will have another Cooler by the Lake soon. All right. Thank you, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.